the queen with a broken wrist. Queen Shuruping of King Yelu Abaoji of Liao.
Shuruping, Queen Yelu Abaoji, the queen of the Liao king.
She was a member of the northern nomadic Khitan aristocracy, and at the age of 18, she married her cousin, Yelu Abaoji, who was 8 years older than her. She married her cousin Yelu Abaoji and gave birth to 3 sons. The first son, King Yelu Bey of Dongdan Tuwu, the second son, Liao Taizong Yelu Diguang, and the third son, Huangtaidi Yelu Liao. Shuruping is a woman heroine.
She is courageous and excellent in civil and military skills.
She can be the only one ruling military and state affairs so that Yelu Abaoji has no worries and is his preferred partner. Once, Abaoji led the troops to war, and the yellow head of the Room Way Department took advantage of the weakness, marching to attack. Queen Shuruping was brave and resolute, leading the remaining soldiers to fight bravely, defeating the invading enemy, and keeping the Khitan regime safe and sound. From then on, Shuruping was a powerful force in the north, spreading her fame throughout the north and south. Shuruping also had a good eye for helping her husband to recognize and employ people. One year, Liu Shiguang, the Han warlord who ruled Yuzhou present-day Beijing, lost a series of wars against Li Kangxin Kasta, the son of Li Kaiyan, and sent his observer Han Yanhui to ask for help from Abaoji, who refused to bow down to him, and so angered Abaoji, who detained him and sent him to the wilderness as an enslaved person to herd horses.
After observing him and realizing that he had some wisdom and high culture, Shuruping recommended him to Abaoji and said,
"The fact that Yan Hui could keep his honor and not yield shows that he was a rare and virtuous man, and this kind of man could not be used as an enslaved person but should be used with courtesy." So, Abaoji called Han Yanhui, after inspection, immediately appointed him as a military officer, state and foreign affairs counselor, leaning on him as an indispensable right-hand man. Han Yanhui was grateful for the favor and did his best to serve Abaoji. Under his advice, he adopted various policies that greatly enhanced the economic strength of the Khitan. Recognizing the importance of Han intellectuals, Abaoji paid more attention to the selection of talents from the Han people. And people like Han Jigu and Kong Moji were employed by him and contributed significantly to the creation of the Liao dynasty. At the beginning of 916, Abaoji built an altar and assumed the throne of the Liao dynasty at Jinlingang, east of Lohuajo, the area of Baxianju Zhao de Li. With the name of Khitan changed to Liao in the time of King Taizong of the Liao dynasty, adopting the system of the Han dynasty, he built the Book of the Gods. He proclaimed himself king of the great sage Da Mingming and crowned Shuruping, queen of Yingqian Da Mingdi. He built the imperial capital named Shanjing in the time of King Taizong of Liao. In the present-day Balinsuoki, South Polo city of Jiaodong municipality, the birth of the Khitan slave state was announced, and a new page in the history of northern China was opened.
After the establishment of the Liao dynasty, the economic and military power of the Khitans increased due to the unification of the 8 Khitan tribes, the expansion of their territories, the increase in the number of foreign captives, refugees, and tribes that descended to the Khitans, as well as the development of agriculture, industry, and commerce.
At this time, the Central Plains were in a period of great turmoil with clans and towns, warlords, and a lot of fire and corpses in the fields. The Khitan nobles led by Abaoji expanded southward more actively. Shuruping became an indispensable advisor and general to Abaoji, as he was present on the battlefields and took part in the decision-making process during the wars. In 922, the first year of Qianzhen, the second year of Long in the later Liao dynasty, King Li Kangxin of Jin besieged Zhang Wenli of Zhongzhou present-day Zhending in Hebei, and Wang Chuji, the UYW governor of Dingzhou present-day Dingshan in Hebei, also an enemy of Li, worried that the loss of Zhongzhou would cause Dingzhou to fall into a cold war, and secretly sent someone to ask his son, Wang Yu, who had already surrendered to Liao, to try to bribe the Khitani nobility, so that Liao would send its troops southward to relieve Zhengzhou's siege. Wang Yu told Abaoji, "Zhongzhou is full of beautiful women and mountains of gold. If the king goes there quickly, it will become his own. Otherwise, it will be owned by the king of Jin." Abaoji was moved by his heart to take the opportunity to take Zhongzhou, the 2 major towns in the Central Plains. The point said the country's main force would be going south. Shuruping still thought that the time was not ripe and should not take the risk, and said to Abaoji, "We have a wealth of sheep and horses in Shila, which is a great joy. Why do we have to labor far away and take advantage of others to get benefits? I have heard that the king of Jin is unrivaled in his use of military force, so we should be careful in fighting with him, for if we lose, it will be too late for us to regret."
Abaoji did not listen to him and said, "Zhang Wenli has $5 million of gold. I'll get it and give it to you." He led his army to go.
He captured Chuozhou, present-day Zhuo County, Hebei, and surrounded Jingzhou. In the first month of the following year, Li Kun Castrol personally attacked with 5,000 iron horse riders, repulsed the Liao army, and killed Abaoji in Wamdu, now Hebei. When Abaoji was forced to retreat, it snowed heavily for 10 days, several feet deep, and the Liao soldiers and men froze and starved to death and returned in great distress.
Abaoji, get this lesson. See, the Han land is challenging to take lightly.
In the planning of Shuruping, first to the west to stabilize the weaker force of the Turkic, Tugukan, and Danghao departments.
Shuruping sat in the imperial capital to ensure the safety of the rear hinterland. After appeasing the west, Shuruping returned to the east with Abaoji to eliminate the Bahai country, occupying the entire Liaodong area for the future southward to lift the worries.
In July 926 AD, on his way back from conquering the Bohai kingdom, he died in Fu city, present-day Nong'an, Jilin.
His second son, Yelu de Guang, succeeded him as King Taizong of Liao and was honored with the Xixing King title. Shuruping was honored as the Queen Dowager of Yingxin and controlled the government. She did not immediately set up a new king as in the Central Plains, but for more than a year, she was the only one who faced the south in the imperial court. To control the power in her own hands and put her favorite son Yelu de Guang on the throne, she wielded the white butcher's knife to kill all who got in her way. Soon after the death of Abaoji, Shuruping showed her ferocious and tyrannical side.
On the pretext of sending a message to the late king, she cut off the heads of the chiefs one by one.
After that, whenever any person she disliked, she would say, "Go and send me a message to the late king," and then she would send that person to Abaoji's tomb to be killed.
Even the wife of her younger brother, Yelu, became the ghost of her sword in a confused manner, and she did not know what crime she had committed until the end of her life.
Finally, Shuruping's butcher's knife was wielded on the head of Zhao Saiwen, the Han Chinese.
Zhao Saiwen was originally a general under the warlord Liu Renggong of Yuzhou, a man of superior strength and courage in battle.
After surrendering to the Liao dynasty, he was highly appreciated by Abaoji and was authorized to be the general of the Han army.
This time, he somehow offended Shuruping.
Shuruping suddenly ordered him to send a message to Abaoji to kill him. Zhao Saiwen, who had been in the official circles of the Central Plains for many years and had some wisdom,
was not willing to be killed for nothing, so he stood in the hall and refused to go on his way.
Shuruping asked, "You serve the late king very closely.
Why don't you go?" Zhao Saiwen replied, "If I were close to the late king, who could be better than you, Queen Dowager? If the Queen Dowager can go first, I will surely follow her." These words immediately put Shuruping in a dilemma. In front of the whole court, she froze for a long time and had to say, "It is not that I do not want to go to the ground from the late king, but because my sons are still young and weak, and there is no master of the country.
I can't go there for a while, but I will show something too."
Then he took out his sword, cut off his right hand, and sent it to the tomb of Abaoji. Zhao Saiwen was miraculously spared. Shuruping never thought the knife she raised would fall on her hand. To commemorate her right hand and recognize her martyrdom to her husband's martyrdom, she built a temple in Shanjing where she built a broken wrist building and erected a monument to commemorate her death. From then on, she was nicknamed Queen Dowager with broken wrist.
Whether politically motivated or truly heartless, during her one-year reign,
she killed over 100 powerful officials and generals, thus consolidating the power of the Liao kingdom.
After that, she was able to realize her faults and make good use of her talents.
She utilized her talents well and united, and appointed many capable people, significantly strengthening Liao's power from another angle.
During the one-year period when Shuruping was in power, she eliminated all the so-called dissidents by killing them. and then she started to plan for the abolition of the first and the establishment of the second. Knowing well that Shuruhai was determined to establish another Diguang, Tuw took the initiative to ask for the abdication of the throne. But Shuruhai still wanted to put on a fair and unbiased attitude, and made use of the traditional practice of electing Khans to establish Yelu Diguang as the king with the title of successor of the sacred king as King Taizong of Liao using a democratic election. Shuruhai was named Queen Dowager of Yishan as King Taizong of Liao. The title of the king was King Successor, and Shuruping was called Queen Dowager of Yishan.
Figure wants to return to the eastern country.
Still, when the human king was king, he deliberately pretended to be
free from the appearance of free in the palace to build a book building.
He studied all day long and wrote a poem called Ali Jianyuan, which expressed his feelings of being willing to live in the forest and spring, and had no intention to engage in politics.
Although Shuruping and Diguang outwardly showed concern and love for Tuw, visiting Chu's consort Xiao several times when she was seriously ill and making the Dongdan country go into mourning after Xiao's death.
In reality, Shuruping and Diguang did not let go of their preventive measures and persecution of Tuw for a moment. To weaken the power of Dongdan in the third year of Taiangxian 928, taking advantage of the fact that Tuw was staying in Shengjing, they ordered their prime minister, Yelu,
to move the people of Dongdan to Dongping present-day Liaoyang, Liaoning province, to strengthen the Liao court's control over them.
At the same time, Diguang gave Tu additional guards, which was called protection, but was surveillance.
Diguang also visited Dongdan's royal residence several times to check on Tux's movements.
Tu Shu became even more depressed, and his mood was extremely low.
After Tan Mingzong Li Siyuan heard, and sent people from the sea with a secret letter to Law, Taiangxian 5 years 930 years. In November, the map Desire, full of depression and grief, borrowed with Mrs. Gio and part of the children's entourage,
carrying 10,000 scrolls of books floating south of the sea, to the central plains to seek refuge to go.
Figure wants to escape, and his eldest son Yao Shuan, also known as Redundant, desire to stay in the Liao dynasty.
Tu Xuan was in the central plains, but his heart was always nostalgic for his relatives in his homeland, and he often sent people back to visit and greet them.
In 936 AD, he was killed by Li Kongka, the last king of the later Tang dynasty, at the age of 38.
The misfortune of Tu Xuan aroused the great sympathy of the Liao dynasty's subjects.
The people of the Liao dynasty sympathized with Tu Shu, and to a large extent, they were driven by this feeling when they later chose Yelu Ruan to be the king. After Yelu Diguang took the throne, he honored Shuruping. In the birthplace of Shuruhai, Kuni Prefecture, he built the Queen Dowager Yingshan's birth monument to celebrate her merits.
October 1st, the birthday of Shuruhai, was designated as the Yongning Festival, which was celebrated yearly. Sometimes Shuruping's health could be better, the amount of food is reduced, and Diguang refuses to eat.
When he did not respond well, Shuruhai raised his eyebrows and looked at him angrily, which made Diguang retreat in a panic, and he did not dare to see Shuruhai again until he summoned him. The military power was still in the hands of Shuruping, and under her direct intervention, Yelu Diguang, in line with the principle of ruling according to custom, carried out a comprehensive construction of the Liao dynasty's official system, the military system, etc., and formed two bureaucratic systems of the southern officials and the northern officials. The northern bureaucracy governed the Khitan and other nomadic peoples, and was the highest authority of the Liao dynasty, with all officials being Khitan nobles.
The southern bureaucracy, modeled on the feudal system of the Tang dynasty, governed the Han Chinese and other farming peoples, and was staffed mainly by Han Chinese. The establishment of these systems paved the way for the feudalization of the Khitan society, which was of historical progress, by gradually completing the system of slave rule in the Liao dynasty.
The improvement of the system also stabilized the internal ruling order of the Liao dynasty and created conditions for further expansion.
Coincidentally, a good opportunity fell in front of the Khitan nobles. In 936, Shi Jingliu, the Hedong minister of Hedong of the later Tang dynasty,
started a rebellion in Jinyang present-day Taiyuan, Shanxi province, to seize the world of the later Tang dynasty. Due to insufficient military strength, he submitted a petition to the Liao dynasty to ask for help on the condition
that he ceded Lulong and the area north of Yanmen Pass to the Liao dynasty and claimed that Yelu Diguang, who was 9 years younger than he was his father king. Coveting the Central Plains for a long time, Shuruping and Diguang were overjoyed at Shi Jingjing's dastardly plan, and busily gathered 50,000 soldiers and horses, led by Diguang himself, and marched southward beyond Yanmen Pass to support Shi Jingjing,
defeating the Tang generals Yang Guangyuan and Zhang Jingda, and enthroning Shi Jingjing as the king of the great Jin dynasty. Afterwards, Shi Jingtang captured Luowan and established the later Jin dynasty. Li Kongka, the last king of the later Tang dynasty, killed Tu Shu and burned himself. From August to December, the Liao dynasty easily obtained from Shi Jingtang's 16 prefectures, located in present-day Hebei and northwestern Shanxi, led by Yuzhou and Yunzhou present-day Datong, Shanxi. With their mountainous terrain and staggered passes, these 16 states had always been a natural barrier for the Central Plains,
to defend themselves against the cavalry of the northern ethnic minorities.
Once this area was lost, the whole of North China was opened up, and there were no more natural dangers until the Yellow River. Since then, the Liao dynasty not only had a strategic advantage to attack southward at any time from the Yanshan Mountains, but also
turned the later Jin dynasty into its vassal and gained 300,000 pieces of cloth and silk from the Central Plains every year. To repay the Liao dynasty for the favor of supporting him, the child King Shi Jingmao sent gifts and bribes to Shuruping, Li Hu and others to pay tribute to the Liao dynasty, which was an unparalleled success since the founding of the Liao dynasty. As a result, the Khitan aristocrats were so complacent that they did not care about the Chinese dynasty anymore. When Shi Jingtang rebelled, Zhao Dijun, the Lulong minister of the later Tang dynasty, also wanted to follow Shi Jingtang's example to claim the Liao dynasty as his vassal and become a child king, but he was rejected.
Li Kongke ordered him to bring troops to rescue Zhang Jingda, but he again dawdled and refused to march.
As a result, he was defeated by Yelu Diguang and surrendered with his troops and was brought back to Liao dynasty.
At this time, he offered Shuruping a lot of treasures and his own house to buy favor. Shuruping showed extreme hatred for those who were ungrateful, and he sneered at Zhao Dijun, who was so ashamed of himself that he soon died of depression.
Shi Jingui, who had been the king for 7 years by betraying the nation's interests, died in the 5th year of the Hutong reign 942, and his nephew Shi Chongyi assumed the throne.
The people of the Central Plains, who hated the brutal exploitation of the Liao dynasty, started a growing anti-Liao fervor.
Shi Chongyi was also unwilling to be insulted by the Liao dynasty,
and demanded to be treated as a grandson but not as a vassal to the Liao dynasty.
Yelu Diguang was furious, and for several years he raised an army to fight against Jin, swearing that he would not only destroy later Jin, but would also be the king of the Central Plains, but he was defeated by the Jin soldiers several times.
Once, he almost became a prisoner, but thanks to the fast running of his camel, he was not caught by the Jin soldiers.
Although Shuruping knew that it was inappropriate to pursue Jin in this way, she did not stop it, probably because the greed of plundering the Central Plains treasures and the Jin dynasty's vast territory had made her originally sober-mind drowsy.
So Diguang, after thorough preparation, invaded the south again in August of the 9th year of the reign of Huitong 946, leading an army. After years of war, the Central Plains were in a state of despair, and the rule of the later Jin dynasty had long been unpopular.
As a result, the Liao army won successive battles, and the generals of the later Jin surrendered one after another.
In December, Shi Chongyi surrendered, and the later Jin fell. In the first month of the following year 947, Diguang drove into the capital city of later Jin, Daliang present-day Kaifeng, and proudly dressed up in the Han Chinese costume to receive the congratulations of all the officials. Changed the name of the state to Daliao, and the name of the year to Datong, which indicated that the world had already realized the great Commonwealth of China, and that Diguang was going to
reside in the Central Plains of China for a long time and be the sole ruler of the world.
It indicated that the world had become one, and that he would live in the Central Plains for a long time and become the sole lord of the world.
Shuruping heard the news, overjoyed. The original concerns and worries swept away, and immediately sent a special envoy with wine, fruit, and food to travel to Daliang to congratulate Diguang. Diguang was even more pleased.
However, their complacency and joy did not last long.
After the Khitan nobles occupied Daliang, they fully exposed their backward savagery and plundering. Not only plundering all the concubines, eunuchs, artisans, gold, silk, treasures, books, and honorary ceremonies in the court of the later Jin dynasty, and sent them all to the upper capital.
Moreover, the Khitan people in North China and the Central Plains were brutally ruled and looted. The food and fodder of the Khitan army were always self-financed by the soldiers.
They plundered everywhere in the name of horse herding, called hitting the grass valley.
And the people of the Central Plains, countless strong men and women, were killed by the blade's edge. Several old and young people were entrusted to the gully, and the people could not bear to die. This vicious and brutal plundering behavior of the Khitan aristocrats provoked the people of the Central Plains to fight against the Liao.
The people who gathered to fight against the Liao rose and worked together, attacking states and counties, killing officials sent by the Liao dynasty, and besieging and annihilating the Khitan soldiers and soldiers who were plundering.
In particular, the rebels to the east of Daliang were fierce and threatened Daliang by consecutively conquering Song, Biao, and Mi states. Wang Chong's revolt in Tushu state also made Yelu Diguang feel that his way back to the country would be cut off.
As if amid a blazing fire in Daliang, he panicked and retreated northward quickly, lying that the weather was hot and that he had to return to his mother's country to save her.
However, their hands were stained with the blood of the people of the Central Plains. The executioner had not yet gone to the Liao border because of palpitations and melancholy, suffered from a severe illness, and finally died in Datong's first year for 7 years in April in Hebei Luangxian territory of the killing of Hulin. His followers dissected his body, removed his stomach and intestines, stuffed them with salt, and drove him north in a car. As soon as Yelu Diguang died, the contradictions within the ruling group of the Liao dynasty that had once lurked were once again exposed in the issue of succession to the throne, and all kinds of political forces were eager to take advantage of the opportunity to gain power.
Although fully aware of the seriousness of the matter, Shuruping still believed that she had unlimited power and strong deterrent.
Confident that as long as she was still like the death of Abaoji, by the identity of the Queen Dowager,
wielded the white butcher's knife, it would not be extended, the unstable factors will be suppressed, so that the people to tremble again to prostrate at her feet, and her beloved third son Li Hu to the throne.
However, Shuruping never dreamed that it was because of her ferocious and murderous behavior during her reign that she had already aroused the discontent and fear of a large number of nobles and courtiers, and at this time when Yelu Diguang died violently outside the country, people were even more worried that Shuruping would take revenge on the public and make the tragedy of Abaoji's death happen to them again. They all stood against her and were determined to be her enemy.
After Wang Tiu, the king of Dongdan, defected to the later Tang dynasty, his eldest son, Yelu Ruan,
who had stayed behind in the Liao dynasty, was named king of Yongkang.
When Yelu Diguang conquered the later Jin dynasty, Yelu Ruan accompanied him to retrieve his father's remains buried in the Central Plains.
After Diguang's sudden death in Luangxian County, the Liao army was desperate and without a leader.
The generals of the Liao army, including Yelu and Duan, Yelu Chash, Yelu Liu Ji, Yelu Bundu and Xiao Han,
unanimously proposed that Yelu Ruan should succeed to the throne in the army.
When they arrived at Jinyang present-day Jingding, Hebei, Yelu Ruan was formally installed as King Shizong of Liao. When Shuruping learned it was too late, he could only recognize Yelu Ruan's successor.
However, Shuruping and Li Hu were unwilling to accept the defeat and planned a coup d'etat. When Yelu Ruan found out about them, to prevent them from revolting, Yelu Ruan forcibly moved them to Zhuzhou southwest of the town of Lindong, jarred a league, and put them under house arrest, and killed Sitadashi and Chu Xiali, who were involved in the plan. At the same time, he dissolved the enslaved people owned by Shuruping, and gave them to his ministers, thus significantly weakening Shuruping's power.
In 953, Shuruhai ended his life in obscurity at 75, and was buried in the ancestral tomb with the posthumous title of Chaste Virtue.
In 1050 to add, her posthumous name was changed to Queen Chunkin.